Everybody, Dr. Joe's in the house, and I hope you're all doing well. Been a long time, but I'm back in the US and raring to go. I spent several weeks, in fact, in Ghana. I had two trips. First trip was for, oh, good Lord, about over a month. And then I came back for a week and a half. I had to go back again, and I was gone for almost 3 weeks. So it's great to be back. We had a death in the family. My brother's wife passed away, and so that's what consumed a lot of my time and effort, and the reason why I had to go back a couple of times. But I'm here and ready to go. Let me make sure the folks down on you think the folks down on Instagram are now on. So today, it's all about vacancies. I mean, the market shifted, and I know a lot of people have got rentals, and the market shifted, so it's harder to sell. So a lot more people now are exploring rentals, and as a result of that, for good tenants, um, they have a lot more choices now. And so, what's really important if you have a property to rent is to try to differentiate yourself from your competition, and also really understand, what vacancies can do. It's a huge expense in terms of the turnover cost and the vacancy cost. So I thought it'd be good, given the market, to kind of talk about this subject, and that's the reason why we're doing it today. So, vacancies kill profits, stop the downtime is what it's all about today. And let's see if I can get my stuff in here. Okay. So, as usual, I'm going to break today's session down into smaller pieces, smaller segments. And the first segment, I'm going to break it down to 5 segments this week instead of my usual 6. So it's going to be 5 segments. And so essentially at the end of this, about 20, 25 minutes, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you've got some questions, anything to do with real estate investing, by all means, put them in the chat box, and I will do my best to answer them. And for those people who would like to book a one-on-one, where we can do a deep dive into any subject of interest to you, you can leverage my over 35 years worth of experiences. Then by all means go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com, www.joeasamoah.com, and then book a session with me, ask Dr. Joe, and then we'll take it from there. So let's talk about vacancies. And the question is, do you know how much money is vacancy silently draining your portfolio every single month? When you do the numbers, it's devastating. Nothing exposes weaknesses in a real estate portfolio faster than vacancy, in my opinion. Many investors spend years focused on finding the deals, raising the capital, completing the renovations, and increasing rents, yet underestimate how devastating extended time downtime can be. If you have properties, you've had vacancies for a while, I think you'll understand what I'm saying. A property does not stop generating expenses simply because somebody moves out. You still have to pay your mortgage, you still have to pay your insurance, you still have to pay your taxes, you still got to pay utility bills, you still got maintenance issues. So every vacant day becomes a direct assault on your cash flow, profitability, and long-term portfolio growth. So one of the biggest misconceptions among new investors, especially, is believing that vacancy is just simply part of the business. Well, it is, but it's not. Experienced investors understand that while some turnover is unavoidable, prolonged downtime is often the result of weak systems, poor planning, bad communications, incorrect pricing, or even ineffective marketing. So the investors, who consistently succeed are not necessarily the ones with the biggest portfolios. Instead, they are often the investors who manage occupancy exceptionally well and build systems that keep their homes desirable and consistently occupied. I was doing the numbers on my portfolio, and I realized that I'm averaging right now, again, not to brag or anything, 8.1 years per tenant. 8.1 years is what I'm averaging across my portfolio of properties all my tenants. What does that mean? It means that for somebody who has a turnover of 2 years, then I don't. They have to go through four lots of turnovers, where I have to go through one. And if you consider a turnover will cost you at least 2 to 3 months lost of income, if you can save that, that's potentially 8 to 10 months worth of revenue that stays in your pocket. And that's why this is a really, really important subject. So some purchase properties with unrealistic rent expectations, and sit empty for months, while competitors lease their units within days. Why is that? Others delay repairs between residents, hoping to quote unquote save money, only to lose far more in extended vacancy. So, some investors become overly emotional during tenant screening, rushing to fill a unit with a wrong tenant. You know how it is. Your mortgages due, the place is sitting there empty. Somebody shows up. They're not really your ideal candidate, but they got the money. They start talking a good game, and you lower your standards, and so on. So that's not always a good idea. I've learned the hard way on that one. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of real estate investing often begins and ends with vacancy management. At the same time, some of the most successful residential investors have transformed vacancy reduction into a competitive advantage. So they prepare the units before turnover occurs. They communicate well with residents. They market aggressively. They price strategically, and they can create a resident experience that encourages long-term occupancy. That's what I do. I try to encourage long-term occupancy. I think last week was Mother's Day, so all my tenants got Mother's Day gifts. Again, it's all about customer satisfaction, making sure my tenants are happy, because if they're happy, they tend to stay longer. And so, most importantly, they understand that reducing vacancy is not just simply about filling units faster. No, it's about creating predictable, sustainable cash flow that supports really long-term wealth creation. Okay, so that's the intro. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of this stuff. I'm going to break into 5 sections. And the first one is the real cost of a vacancy. What does it really cost you to have an empty unit? And the question is, are you only calculating lost rent while ignoring the hidden costs that are destroying your profits? So you just thinking that vacancy just costs you, the rent, and you kind of ignore all the other stuff associated with the vacancy. So many investors calculate vacancy incorrectly because they only focus on the monthly rent, and that they obviously not collecting. In reality, vacancy creates a chain reaction of financial damage that extends far beyond lost income. While a property sits empty, investors continue paying fixed expenses such as mortgages, taxes, insurance, HOA fees, utilities, landscaping maintenance, and management costs. So in many cases, the property also begins deteriorating faster because vacant homes tend to attract neglect, vandalism, pests, moisture problems, and deferred maintenance. So there's also other downsides associated with having a vacant property. So several investors have shared painful stories of properties that have been sitting vacant for 3 to 6 months because they insisted on achieving unrealistic rent prices. By the time they finally leased the property, they had lost significantly more money than if they had priced the property competitively from the beginning. Pricing strategy, which we're going to talk about a bit later on. So pride and greed often becomes expensive business decisions. Successful investors understand that an occupied property generating slightly lower rent is usually far more profitable than an empty property chasing perfection. Sometimes it's just cheaper to reduce your rent, get traffic in there, get someone to move into your property than holding out to get max dollars. That's my opinion. Vacancy also creates emotional pressure that leads to poor decisions. As I said before, you get desperate and you lower your standards and you let somebody in there who really shouldn't be there. So people panic and approve weak applicants simply to stop the bleeding. Unfortunately, many of those rushed decisions results in late payments, property damage, lease violations, and costly evictions. So your rush on the front end will cost you dearly on the back end. So experienced landlords, hopefully like you and I, we try to explain that desperation leasing creates bigger problems. Desperation leasing creates bigger problems than temporary vacancy itself. So, on the other hand, investors who consistently minimize vacancy treat occupancy as a financial priority, and we try to focus on driving that down. So, we know that every additional day vacant weakens returns and slows momentum. So, that's number one. The true cost of vacancy. And so let's go on to number two, which is I kind of mentioned it before, which is the pricing strategy. That's important because that also has a determination on whether your property is going to remain vacant or not. Obviously, pricing is important. So the question is your property sitting empty because the market rejected your price before people even ever saw your listing? I think I don't need to go into the details of how important prices is. So obviously, if you're in a neighborhood where the rents are, I don't know, $1,000, and you decide, well, I need to get 1,500, so you list it at 1,500, and lo and behold, very few people, if any, apply, and which means that you're not going to get anybody. And at some point, you're going to have to lower your price because the market doesn't lie. So, one of the most common mistakes investors make is overpricing their rental properties. Many investors become emotionally attached to their renovations or projected returns and assume that tenants will simply pay whatever rent is being asked. It doesn't work that way. You won't go to the grocery store if the cost of eggs is, I don't know, $2. You will not pay $4 if the shop wants to sell it at that price. So unfortunately, the market does not care about your investor mortgage payments, your taxes, your insurance, your rehab budget, your financial goals. They don't care. Tenants don't care. Residents compare value, condition, location, amenities, and pricing against competing options. So successful investors understand the importance of having a pricing strategically from day one. It's better just to price it right than to price it too high, especially in this market where the market is soft and there's a lot of competition out there. So many experienced investors intentionally price slightly lower. I sometimes do that, especially for my non-Section 8 properties, and to generate stronger demand, attract multiple qualified applicants, and also to reduce downtime significantly. A unit that leases quickly often outperforms a higher priced unit that remains vacant for months. So if you do the numbers, it just works out cheaper. I know there's an emotional factor to this thing, but it makes business sense sometimes just to price it slightly lower than market so you can get a lot of traffic coming over to your property. So hopefully you can select the best tenant. So the strongest investors must focus on annual net income, not emotional pricing victories. Many struggling investors also ignore what we call seasonal patterns. Depending on where you are, certain months it's just difficult to get people because people aren't moving. So around here in the DC area, that's around the winter time because the weather's bad, it's snowing, and people just aren't in the mood to go look for a house. So obviously, you want to try to avoid having vacancies during that time. You want to incentivize your tenants to stay during those periods. So you adapt pricing strategies to market conditions. So also the marketplace does tell you some things about your property, and I always ask people if they don't fill an application, why. So I need to understand what I'm doing wrong, what I can change, So hopefully I can address any issues, and I need to adjust pricing quickly, refresh my listings if necessary with improved photographs, and all those things help in filling the unit faster. So the market constantly provides feedback, but smart investors listen, and novice investors don't listen. The marketplace is talking to you, and so on. So that's number two. Let's go to number three, which is marketing matters more than most investors realize. It's not enough just to throw a house on the market and assume that people are going to go running to you. So, are weak photos, poor descriptions, and lazy marketing costing you thousands in vacancy costs? I mean, I see some stuff. It's just tacky photographs. It's like, someone's taking iPhone photographs. The lighting is dark. They take photographs with their thumb or their finger over the lens. The descriptions are very vague, and it's just a second-rate job. So many investors underestimate how much marketing influences vacancy. In today's market, residents often decide whether to view a property within seconds of seeing a listing online. Okay, so your online presence is what is going to make or break you. Poor lighting, blurry photos, cluttered rooms, incomplete descriptions, or outdated marketing immediately can reduce interest. So investors sometimes spend tens of thousands of dollars renovating the property but refuse to invest properly in presenting it. Successful investors understand that strong marketing is not optional. No, it's part of the business. Professional quality photographs, clean staging. I stage all my properties. Compelling descriptions, video walkthroughs, social media promotion, and quick responses to inquiries all contribute to faster leasing. Many investors who struggle with vacancy simply fail to create enough excitement around the property. Some investors have learned painful lessons, assuming that good properties rent themselves. They don't. They posted low quality cell phone photographs, ignored inquiries for days, or failed to follow up with interested applicants. So by the time they responded, the prospective residents already found somewhere else. They moved on. In competitive markets like what we are in right now, speed matters. Residents often choose a landlord who responds fastest and appears most organized. The best investors also understand the importance of targeting the right audience. They highlight features that matter most to the ideal resident profile: safe neighborhoods, updated kitchens, parking, transportation access, outdoor space, school, shopping, energy efficiency, washer dryer. These are all things pet friendly. These are all things that appeal to today's renter. They market the benefits, not just the square footage. So that's number three, kind of halfway through, and so on. So as usual, if you got any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll get to them in about 10 minutes or so. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me, where we can do a deep dive into any real estate topic of your choosing, anything to do with rentals, whether it's financing, whether it's do rehabs, it doesn't really matter. It's always good sometimes to bounce off ideas with somebody who's probably experienced the same problems that you're going through and have solved them. So go to my website, www.joeasimo.com, www.joeasimo.com, if you want to schedule a one-on-one with me. Okay, let's move on to number four or five. Preparing for turnover before it happens. And I suppose the question is, are you waiting until a resident moves out before starting the turnover process? Are you waiting until the place is vacant, or are you going to be proactive and start as soon as possible? So one of the biggest difference between struggling landlords and experienced operators is preparation. Weak investors begin planning after a resident leaves. Strong investors like you and I, hopefully, begin preparing weeks or even months before the turnover actually occurs. Successful vacancy reduction starts long before the keys are turned in or returned. Experienced investors maintain strong communications with residents, throughout the lease process. They regularly evaluate intentions, discuss future plans, and identify potential move outs in advance. Okay, this allows them to begin marketing the property early, schedule contractors ahead of time, and reduce unnecessary downtime. So many investors have lost weeks of rent simply because they were unprepared. Contractors were unavailable, materials were delayed, clearing crews were not scheduled, leasing photos were outdated, marketing began too late. Each daily compounded into additional vacancy losses. So the point is investors who operate reactively often experience repeated operational chaos. The most organized investors, again, hopefully like you and I, we create turnover systems and checklists. We know exactly who to call, what repairs are to prioritize, and how quickly contractors must work, and when the market should begin. So the processes are predictable and repeatable. Systems reduce stress, increase efficiency, and dramatically improve occupancy rates. And then finally, number five, which is tenant retention is vacancy prevention. Tenancy retention, keeping tenants, is vacancy prevention. So, what do I mean by all this? Why are some investors constantly replacing residents while others keep them for many years? As I said before, I'm averaging just over 8 years per resident. Again, that's not to brag. It's just that, I see vacancy for what it is. I want to minimize vacancy. I want to minimize turnover. I want my tenants to stay because if they stay, if they're happy, focus on customer satisfaction, they generally pay their rent, pleasant to deal with, no drama, and usually stay a long time. So the question is, why are some investors constantly replacing residents while others keep them for years? Well, the easiest vacancy to solve is the one that never happens. Uh-huh. The easiest vacancy is to solve is the one that never happens. So many successful investors reduce downtime dramatically simply by retaining quality tenants longer. Long-term occupancy creates predictable cash flows, lower turnover costs, less stress, and greater operational stability. Unfortunately, many landlords unintentionally push good residents away through poor communications, delayed repairs, disrespectful treatment, excessive rent increases, and lack of professionalism. Residents who feel ignored or undervalued are far more likely to move when their leases expire. Yeah, it's true. Investors who often focus heavily on acquisition strategies while neglecting customer service, they're going to experience, you know, higher turnovers. So the best investors provide clean, safe, well-maintained homes, and we communicate professionally. We address concerns quickly, follow through on promises, and build trust. Many successful investors, like you and I, hopefully, have residents who renew repeatedly because they genuinely appreciate the living experience. So at the same time, some investors learn difficult lessons after tolerating problematic residents too long. So poor screening, inconsistent policies, and a lack of accountability often lead to conflict, property damage, and eventually vacancy. So strong tenant retention starts with selecting the right residents in the first place. So in conclusion, again, I'm going to be going to a Q&A session in a couple of minutes. So please put your questions in and I'll get to them shortly. The question is, will your portfolio control vacancy or will vacancy control your portfolio? Okay. Vacancy is one of the most underestimated threats in residential real estate investing. Believe me, that's true. Many investors focus heavily on acquisition, financing, and renovations while ignoring the operational discipline required to maintain consistent occupancy. Yet, over time, prolonged downtime can quietly destroy profitability, increase stress, weaken cash flow, and limit long-term growth. So the most successful investors understand that vacancy management is not just simply about finding residents quickly. No, it's about building systems, creating stability, consistency, and long-term scalability. They prepare before turnover occurs. They price strategically, they market aggressively, and they retain quality residents. So, most importantly, they operate proactively rather than reactively. The lessons learned from experienced mentors investors reveal a consistent pattern. What's that pattern? The investors who struggle most with vacancy and often lack preparation, systems, communications, or market awareness. Meanwhile, the investors who build strong, predictable portfolios focus heavily on operational excellence and resident satisfaction. They understand that reducing downtime creates more than higher profits. It creates peace of mind and long-term business stability or sustainability. As you continue building your real estate portfolio, hopefully remember that every vacancy day that matters, because every delay compounds and every operational weakness eventually appears in your financial performance. So the investors who matter or who master vacancy reduction position themselves for stronger cash flow, better scalability, and greater long-term success. So that's it, my friends. That is the Q&A. That's the what's it called, the education portion for today. Hopefully that was interesting, and please feel free to go to the chat box, and if you've got any questions, put them there. I'll get to them in about a couple of minutes. If you want to shoot me an email, I can be reached at joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me where we can do a deep dive into any question, any issues that you're facing, please book it at www.joeasamoah.com, www.joeasamoah.com. And yeah, that's it. So, my friends, let's get down to business. Let's see if there's any questions that I can answer. Let's have a look. Greetings from Phoenix. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Yes. How you doing, Dow, too? It's been a long time. Hope you're doing well. I'd like to extend my condolences again. And
sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
If you're my internet
it
here.
looks like an issue with the router.
Okay, next question is.
So try restarting them. Unplug both of them.
Sorry,
then plug the router back in.
Got some
Wait
background
30
noises
seconds.
here.
Once the router is back on and connected to the internet,
See if you
plug
can.
in the Echo device.
Question is, okay, good, it's gone. So let's have a look. What's this one? I'd like to explain my condolences. And the next one is, how do you determine that fine line? The fine line, which fine line are you referring to, Daniel Stan? Well, you're gonna have to clarify what fine line you're referring to. But generally, you don't want to price your house too high, because if you do, you're going to minimize traffic or reduce traffic. And likewise, you don't want to price it too low, whereby you're leaving money on the table. So there is a line, and it's kind of a sweet spot. I try to at least try to be competitive, both in terms of product, both in terms of my requirements, and because I know tier one tenants, they always look for certain things. Neighborhood, number one, that always trumps certain things, then the property, and then what kind of landlord I am. So if you want to ask your question again, Daniel Stan 4077, how do you determine that fine line? Then I'll be more than happy to answer that. Okay, the next one is, I agree. Okay. I agree. I once had a rental for over a year because the previous tenant did so much damage. Then the rental market was more competitive. Once I had finished rehabbing the house, I lost a lot of money. Yeah. Vacancies can be expensive because you got no income coming through. You still got your expenses to pay. You got to paint the place, you got to clean the place, you got to market the place, you got to show the place. It's very, very, very expensive. And if you can figure out a way to keep your tenants longer, believe me, you can save a lot of money compared to having that revolving door, I call it, where people come in, stay for a little bit, and then they leave. So again, please put your questions in the chat box. I'll get to them shortly. And the rent amount is too high or too low. What's that fine line? I'll do my research first, find out what the going rate is for your property in your area. There's lots of websites, there's lots of apps that can provide you with that information, whether it be like Rentometer, AI can help you nowadays. And there's quite a lot of tools out there that will share with you what the marketplace is. And then it's up to you whether you want to price it slightly below or slightly above. That's your call. But whether you whatever you do, there will be an impact in terms of traffic going to your property. Okay, so if there are any more questions, please put in the chat box. I will get to you shortly. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. It's now 7:33. We had a good session today. But vacancy management is very, very important. The market is shifted. There are a lot more landlords now out there who can't sell their properties, and so they have no choice but to rent them. And and those people are putting some good products onto the marketplace. So if you got an iffy product in an iffy neighborhood and you're an iffy landlord, then you're going to have some challenges right now, because good tenants, the tier 1 tenants, they have choices, and they're going to gravitate towards the best product as opposed to your product because you think it's cheap or you think it's it's worth it, and so on. So okay, my friends, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Again, I enjoyed being back. The first time I've had a live session for a number of weeks, and I'll be in town I don't think I'm traveling for a few more weeks. I think I'm going to Atlanta next month for a conference. I've been invited to be one of the speakers there. So that should be interesting. I'll give you more information on that event next week. So so hopefully today was interesting, informative, educational. I had a good time. Get back to the swing of things. And hopefully, my friends, I will see you next week for another Wealth Wednesday live stream. So take care. Bye for now.